Alright, so here we are again. We're going to be solving equations by factoring. I've got another couple types that we're going to look at. And we may even get into a third type, depends on how much time we spend on it. I'll try to do a little bit better job of explaining each step a little bit more. It was brought to my attention I went a little bit fast on the last video. So let's say we're asked to solve 2x squared equals 17 over 3x plus 1. Now this one's a little bit different. It has a fraction in it. Those fractions tend to scare people off. Don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And we'll deal with that fraction head on right off the bat here. We want to get rid of the 3. So that means we're just going to multiply everything times 3. So I get 6x squared equals 17x plus 3. Now we should be in familiar territory. We're just going to move these two over. And in this case, we're going to have to subtract both of them. So I get 6x squared minus 17x minus 3. And remember, these equal 0. So I've got to factor this. 6 times negative 3. That gives me negative 18. So that means I'm going to rewrite the first term. I will rewrite the last term. So what two numbers multiply together to give me negative 18? That will add up to negative 17x. So it's going to be 18 and 1, negative 18 and 1. So I get negative 18x and x. Remember, I'm breaking this down into 2. So I can divide this first binomial. Remember, I'm going to factor them by grouping now. I'll take a 6x out of the first one, and I get x minus 3. If I can't take anything out, I just put a 1 in there as a placeholder. So that means I've got 6x plus 1, and x minus 3 is my factors. Now remember, we're trying to solve for x, so we need to set each of these equal to 0. So we would add 3, x equals 3. And on this one, we have to subtract 1, and then divide by 6. So our answer will be negative 1/6 and positive 3. All right, so let's look at another example. We've got z squared over 6 minus z over 2 minus 3 equals 0. Now, in Schoology, I can't really write the fractions correctly, so it'll look like this. Alright, so don't forget that. I'll put a line in there for the z. So this whole thing would look like that. Okay? So we need to clear out the fractions. So what I'm going to do is multiply by the largest denominator that's there. 6. We'll get rid of them. So we'll multiply by 6. So that crosses this out. So I've got z squared. But on this one, I end up with 6z over 2. And then 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. Well, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I've got z squared minus 3z minus 18. So we need to ask ourselves what two numbers multiply together to give us negative 18 that will also give us negative 3. And in this case, we could have a negative 6 times a positive 3. So this one breaks down a little bit easier. I've got 6z minus 6 and z plus 3. Then we set these equal to 0. And we've got z equals 6 and z equals negative 3. So our answer would look like this. And it doesn't matter what order these are in. All right, so that's one type. Let's look at another type here. Now this kind is going to have a cubed root in it. X cubed equals 4x. So when you see that cubed root in there, we're actually going to end up with 3 answers for this. So we need to put everything on one side. So I've got x cubed. We subtract this to move it over. Minus 4x equals 0. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull an x out of this. So I end up with x squared minus 4 equals 0. Now I can solve this. I don't have a middle term. I don't have a middle x term. So I'm going to ask myself what two numbers multiply together to give me negative 4 that will add up to 0. And in this case, I end up with x plus 2 and x minus 2. So we're going to set all these equal to 0. Obviously, x equals 0. X plus 2 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. So we'll subtract 2, and I get negative 2 for x also. And we add 2, and I get x equals 2. So our solution set is 0, negative 2, and 2. Pretty simple, right? No, it doesn't look simple, but once you start to break down the steps and go step by step, you're in good shape. So let's look at another one here. X cubed equals 2x squared plus 3x. So the first thing we do, actually you might want to pause this, try this one on your own. The first thing we'll do is move this stuff over. So I've got to subtract these. So I've got x cubed minus 2x squared minus 3x equals 0. Since they all have an x term, I can pull an x out. So now I've got x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. And then I'm going to factor this like a normal trinomial. What two numbers multiply together to give me negative 3 that will add up to negative 2? Well, hopefully you get negative 3 and positive 1. So we've got our 3 answers. X equals 0, x equals 3 because we would have to add it, and x equals negative 1. So 0, 3, negative 1. And the last type of problem, finally, right? The last type of problem we have is going to be x cubed plus 5x squared equals x plus 5. So we're going to use some skills that we've already learned. First, we're going to move this over by subtracting both. So I get x cubed plus 5x squared minus x minus 5. So we're going to factor these by grouping. Well, the only thing I can pull out of this is x squared. So I end up with x plus 5. And on this one, I have to pull a negative 1 out because this first term's negative. So I end up with x plus 5. So my two factors that I end up with is x squared minus 1 and x plus 5. This one can be factored a little bit more. I can ask myself, what two numbers multiply together that give me negative 1 that will also equal 0? Well, hopefully you got x plus 1 and x minus 1. And of course we still just have x plus 5 over here. Now if you're not sure about this stuff, remember, you can check it by foiling. Firsts, outers, inners, last. And those two would cross out and I'd get x squared minus 1. So I've got x plus 1 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0, and x plus 5 equals 0. So x equals negative 1, x equals 1, x equals negative 5. So my solution set might look like something like this. Remember, it doesn't matter what order these are in. I could have negative 5, negative 1, and 1. So let me give you guys one to try out on your own. Let's look at x cubed minus 9x equals 18 minus 2x squared. So the first thing I'll do is move this stuff over. So I've got to subtract 18, add 2x squared. So I'm going to put them in order. Alright, so I've got everything accounted for and it all equals 0. So now I will factor by grouping. I can pull an x squared out of here and I end up with x plus 2. I pull a negative 9 out of here and I end up with x plus 2. So my two factors are x squared minus 9 and x plus 2. So I can factor this a little bit more. I get x plus 3 and x minus 3, and then x plus 2 is still there. So x plus 3 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0. So I would subtract the 3 and get negative 3 for this one. I would add the 3 and get positive 3 for this one. And subtract the 2 and get negative 2 for this one. So my solution set could look like this. Alright, hopefully that works out for you guys. There will be an assignment on Schoology. Actually, you already know that because you had to click this link to find it. And hopefully you guys have a great Easter weekend. Remember, Friday is Good Friday. And we don't have any work or anything that we're going to push out on Friday. So hopefully you have a great weekend. Remember why we celebrate Easter. Remember that Savior, and I hope you guys are thankful for something. Have a great day.